Morning, Frank. On the 9th of February, sunny, bright,
2022.
and it's 2022. Today I said I was going to give a summary over a number of chapters.
Mm-hmm.
I had hoped to be able to go through it all in one session.
Oh, yeah.
But after I'd written it out, I realized it was quite a bit. And you read through it and were having trouble understanding what I've written.
A little bit, not too much. Yeah.
But so I decided that we will go slowly and make sure that we understand
Okay.
what the summary is.
Okay.
So I don't know, we may get through half of it and we may not.
And what's the importance of the summary?
The importance of this summary is it shows what happened in the past with the two nations, Judah and Israel. And in those chapters, 7 through 14, we get a progression of that story plus into the future.
7:14 of Isaiah, right?
Of Isaiah.
Okay.
Now, I never knew whether it was sequential until I read it all in one block, and I could see somehow or another it just came through to me that Isaiah is given a sequential rundown of this nation and what happened to it and what was happening to it and what was going to happen to it.
Wow.
And there's a little bit of back and forth because of certain things, but we'll get to that. So in chapter 7, we get the character. I'm going to give the characters in the story as it starts.
Okay.
Of the nation of Judah and Israel. Ahaz is the king. Ahaz is descended from Uzziah,
Okay.
who had a son, Yotam.
Okay.
Both of them were good kings. Uzziah's was kind of fuzzy at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ahaz. And so he's king of Judah, and he's not considered a good king. At least he's a king of little faith.
Mm-hmm.
Pekah, king of Israel, and he was a son of a general called Ramaliahu. And Shomron is the capital of Samaria.
Mm-hmm. Of the 10 tribes.
And that's of the 10 tribes. We call them the 10 tribes.
Mm-hmm.
We know that David had put magistrates that were of his family up there. There were Levites in every town. And there were priests up there too, because they were also teaching. And so there were other people that...
That's where Elijah and Elisha were too.
Yeah, well, now Ezekiel lived in Anatot, which was a town that a lot of priests lived in. And it was just out...
Ezekiel?
Ezekiel too.
Oh, really? Both of them?
A lot of them lived there because they'd go... It was close to Jerusalem when it was their turn to have a part in the temple. It was easy access. So we know that was the case up there. So all the citizens of Judah, Ahaz of the house of David.
What about Rezin?
Oh, Rezin, king of Syria, and he's in Damascus.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the main characters in this first part of the story. Okay.
Shomron is not a character, but anyway.
What's that?
Shomron is not a character.
Well, Rezin only gets mentioned through about half.
I said Shomron is not a character.
No,
Okay.
it's a town.
Well, you said characters.
The characters are Ahaz, Pekah, Ramaliah, and Rezin. Oh, well, we might add Isaiah to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Ahaz of the house of David gets a hearsay that Syria, called Aram. Now, if you're reading your Bible, you'll see Aram a lot.
Okay.
That's the area of Syria.
Okay.
It's without Lebanon.
Hmm.
Aram throughout is called an ally with Ephraim. Ephraim is the same as Israel. The northern.
They use Ephraim to refer to all the 10 tribes.
Yeah, because he became the firstborn of Joseph
Okay.
by default.
Okay.
So that's the same as the northern kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Israel is called the northern kingdom.
Right.
The only time that Israel refers to the whole of Judah and Israel is when they're not, the two of them are not mentioned.
Oh, okay.
So all the citizens of Judah are trembling with fear because of Ahaz, including Ahaz, because of this rumor.
Including Ahaz or because of Ahaz?
No, including him, because he heard it, and it's being heard throughout Judah that these two guys up north are aligned.
Why are they trembling?
Because Ephraim is aligning himself with Rezin or the Syrian, and
Oh, okay, okay.
they're planning to come down. This is they're planning to come down and capture Judah.
Okay.
And we'll get to that. It says it in this next paragraph, I think. Therefore, Yah has a message, and he tells Isaiah to meet Ahaz at the end of the upper pool by the road going to the laundry place. So it was very specifically where he was supposed to meet him.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is the message he's supposed to give Ahaz. Be on your guard. Don't do anything, and don't cower before these two fired up raging fires, Rezin and the son of the general Ramaliahu. For Syria has conspired to harm you along with Ephraim. That's the coalition up there. This is what they're saying. We will go up to Jerusalem and finish it off. We will break her walls to open up for us and set a new king over her, the son of Tuval. Now, we don't know who Tuval is. We don't know what country he is. Maybe he's from Syria. I don't know. And you, Ahaz, if you have no faith, then you have no future. Therefore, Yah says to you, Ahaz, ask any sign of Yah your God.
So he's saying
it can be anything.
He's saying that Ahaz really didn't have much faith.
No. And he's saying, so give a sign.
Now, who says this?
Isaiah says it to Yah, Ahaz. Okay. But he says back, I'm not asking anything. I shall not test Yah. So this sounds kind of superstitious, doesn't it? I wouldn't do what those Israelites did for anything in the world. You're wearisome to God and man. So then God will give you a sign. You're not going to ask it. He's going to give it to you. This young woman will conceive, and she will bear a son. She will call that child Emmanuel, which turns out that it just means that when that child is remembered, they know God is with them.
Okay.
Because Emmanuel means God with us. Mm-hmm. So two things. The child will eat curds and honey. By the time he knows to refuse evil and choose good, the lands of the two kings you dread will be forsaken. And Yah will bring on you and your people and your father's house, the king of Assyria, days such as never been seen before. Says it's days that they haven't seen since Ephraim left Judah. On that day it will be Egypt and Assyria swarming the land. No pasture land will be, and you will be humiliated, and people will subsist on honey and curds. The goats will give abundant milk, and you will be very poor. So the people
when a child eats curds and honey, does that indicate a certain age?
No, it means that it means that the people are poor. That's the only food left to eat.
Oh, okay.
Because what happens is these guys mow down all the fields that the cows ate and become brambles.
And who does that? The north.
They invade Judah.
The northern kingdom aligned with Rezin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, yeah, actually. They denude their own land up there.
Yeah.
It's peculiar. But the child will eat curds, but he knows, by the time he knows to refuse evil and choose good, means he now knows when mama says no, that is no.
Yeah, does that imply an age?
Yeah, it's usually around 2 years old is when the kids start rebelling against the no. So in chapter 8, the summary in chapter 8 is this. Now Isaiah, and I'm trying to say these names in the English that
Right.
Christians are used to hearing, because I know there are Christians that hear this.
Mm-hmm.
Now Isaiah is told to get a great scroll and write on it with a common pen. That probably has some significance.
Mm-hmm.
This is what he's supposed to write. The spoil speeds and the prey hastens.
What does that mean?
Well, that happens to be the name of this kid that's born to him. It means that this taking over, this denuding the land and having this great bad time, that's what it means. It's coming fast.
Yeah, coming fast. It's going to get worse.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I think it's a flashback in time when he says he came near his wife and she conceived. There's a question whether, some rabbis talk about there was a question whether the child that was to be a sign was Isaiah's child or Ahaz's child.
Oh.
See, Ahaz had a daughter by this point, but he had no son to follow him and keep the line of David going.
You have to have a son to keep the kingdom going.
Yeah, right. And so he didn't have a son, and so was it his son that was a sign, or was it Isaiah's son that had just been born?
Why would Isaiah's son be a sign?
Because of his name that he's given and how old he'll be when this trouble comes.
Okay.
So she conceived and bore a son, and he was told to name him Maher Shalal Hashbaz.
Okay, and this is Isaiah's son, right?
Yes.
Okay.
What a name.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what he wrote on the scroll. And that's what the meaning of it was: the spoil speeds and the prey hastens.
The what?
That's what his name meant.
What? Meant what?
The spoil speeds and the prey hastens.
Oh, I see that. Okay.
So I would say the promised son that was to be the sign to Ahaz about the quick
That was Isaiah's
would be Isaiah's son.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I want to show that it comes from both, but we get the other one, Ahaz's sign, another sign later.
Okay.
So he took the two witnesses who saw him write this down on the scroll and says to them that Yah says, since the people refused the water of Shiloah, these are the cleansing waters where they would wash probably before they went into the temple. He is sending, because they rejoiced in Rezin and the son of Remaliah, so the waters of the king of Assyria that are strong and raging will flow over its banks.
Mm-hmm.
And Assyria in all his glory shall flow and sweep through Yehuda and reach up to the neck.
So
okay.
In other words, it's talking about what they can align themselves with Assyria, but it's going to be harmful in the end.
Yes. So Assyria and Ephraim probably do not know that Assyria is going to come, and they won't get a chance to fulfill their plan.
Right.
So they're not going to be able to put a king.
Well, that's God's hand, too, to stop
That's
that.
right. So that's why. And
Would
he said...
Would you suggest that while they hear this or before they hear it, that they should read this whole section through in their Bibles?
It wouldn't be a bad idea if you wanted to, or read it before and then read it again afterward. That's probably as important as anything.
Okay.
So Assyria took out a lot of it says up to the neck. Okay, what that means to me, and because I know what happened, that's all but Jerusalem. And I understand that there were fortified cities. Yeah. There were 6 that Solomon had made, and they were not taken.
Right.
But a lot of the common people were taken out.
Also, up to the neck, you think of a person in water, they're just barely alive. You know?
Yeah, with just his head sticking out.
Yeah.
So the head was Jerusalem.
Mm.
So that's what Hezekiah gets. He gets Jerusalem.
Mm.
So we know that Assyria took out a lot of major towns in Samaria, and we covered that. Then, at the end of that saying that God is giving him, he says, Emmanuel. God is with us. It looks really bad, but God is with us. Do we think of that sometimes in the world today when we think it's really bad?
Oh, what are we going to do?
God is with us.
Yeah.
But this child that says that this spoil speeds and the prey hastens, he's that sign that God is with us.
Okay, wow.
Because God gave that message, and so you look at the message and what's happening, you say, oh, the two are the same, but he wants us to know Emmanuel well.
And
God is with
Isaiah
us.
lived in Judah. He was part of the
Yes, he
Judah
was. He was a priest.
Mm-hmm.
No, he was related in priesthood and Judah's line.
Mm-hmm.
Then God speaks to the world and tells the world, plot, planned, it shall not be. Confer, conspire, it will not come to pass. Emmanuel.
Mm-hmm.
That applies for today.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I have it here, but he tells the people, people are conspiring, there's conspiracy theories. Don't believe what they say is conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
That also applies to today.
Mm-hmm.
You hear one group, oh, that's just conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been lying all the time, and that is conspiracy. Anyway, when you see that, no, Emmanuel, God is with us. So that's the reason the child is not born, because it's just a sign that this is the time to believe that God is with us. So he would just be beginning to say mother and father. This is in the chapter 8, it tells us. That means about 3 years after he met with Ahaz, this is happening. That's why he could say, you don't need to worry about those two guys up there. They're not even going to be around.
Wow.
So, I have a paragraph here. Gently the Father God speaks to Isaiah, saying, do not fear those they are fearing. It is Yah of hosts you are to sanctify and fear and do homage to. So when we fear other things around us, this message God is giving to Isaiah. When we fear other things around us, we're forgetting that God is with us, and we should fear only Him.
Mm-hmm.
He is a sanctuary and a striking stone for stumbling to both houses of Israel, and a trap and a snare to the people of Jerusalem. That's what God is.
What's both houses of Israel? Is that referring to all of them?
That's talking about Israel and Judah.
Okay.
And God is saying He is the stumbling block.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm the stumbling block, because I'm the one that is allowing Assyria to come in and take out these people.
Mm-hmm.
So bind up the testimony, that could be the scroll that had been called for, and the teaching, Torah in my students. Teaching means Torah, and he has in my students. God has some people that believe.
Mm-hmm.
They're studying the testimony.
Yeah.
God is now hidden from Yaakov, and Isaiah longs to see him. But Isaiah is comforted because he and the children that Yah gave me are messages, signs to Israel from Yah. So God is hiding himself. When darkness comes on the land, people don't know what's going on, and they're fearful. That means God is hidden from them. And Isaiah is comforted that he received the message having this child and naming him such. And so he says they're a sign in Israel. So this firstborn child from Isaiah is the one sign that was given, that in 2 years those leaders would be gone, taken out by Assyria. And thereafter the northern tribes would have a vassal state. And this vassal state lasted through 9 years of a king called Hoshea in the northern kingdom.
Okay, so vassal state means they were under another government.
They're under the Syrian government. The Syrian king was making his empire big.
Yeah.
That's what is going on here.
They're not really a free country.
No. So now at the end of 8, it says, now it describes how the people will turn to spirits of the dead through mediums, and they curse God, and the land become doom and darkness. No matter what they do, there is no avail, because God can't be deterred. At first, it is light for Zebulun and Naphtali. Then it gets more grievous in their land and all of Galilee. So that paragraph describes what the situation is with the people. They're not really believing like Isaiah has told them to. So chapter 9 starts out, so the people are walking in dark, in the shadow of death. They are not, this is my words, they are not dead yet because they're still in the land.
Yeah.
For an Israelite, a Judah man, to be dead is to be out of the land.
Ooh.
It is.
I know.
I know there's a lot of them that haven't come home. They're dead because you're connected to God when you come to the land.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well,
because it's his land and he gave it to you.
Well, we did say that God went with them into exile. So
that's right, and he said he would be a sanctuary.
Right, but when you come to the land, it's more of it's a greater connection or something.
But these people were on the verge of being taken out of the land.
Yeah, that's right.
That's why it's a shadow of death.
Okay.
And things begin to work out for them because a child is born, and the government will be on his shoulder. Now we get to the second child involved in this. Ahaz only has one son born to him. He names him Hezekiah. I gave that in Hebrew because Hezek means strong. Yahu means my God.
Mm-hmm.
My God is strong.
Okay. And the Christians know it pronounces Hezekiah.
Yeah, and the Christians pronounce it Hezekiah. This name says God is strong. The text says something different in every translation about this name. My favorite one just gives it in Hebrew.
Oh.
It doesn't try to translate the name.
Oh.
He's safe that way.
Yeah.
Now, I read a lot of translations. None of them do it exactly the same. So this is my translation of it, which isn't any worse or better, probably. His name is called a wonder, because Peleg's, or what, I didn't write it down, the name. Anyway, it means a miracle or a wonder, okay? Maybe it seemed like a wonder to Ahab when he had a son.
Yeah.
The mighty God, a source. Now, the mighty God, I didn't say almighty God because God is almighty, but God is mighty towards us. The word givur means mighty. Mm-hmm. We know it's used for David's men that were givurim, but mighty men are Hazak. Now, Hazak may also mean, which is the first part of Hezekiah's name, may also mean strong physically as well. Because the mighty man of David did these exploits that are incredible. The reason why I said a source instead of father is because it says avi ad. Now, ad sometimes is used to make olam ad, to make it more firm that it's forever and ever and ever.
Okay.
Because ad can also mean until something.
Okay.
So if you get it in front of a word, it could mean until this happens.
Mm-hmm.
So because of V can mean a spring, that means Father is a source. Father is a spring of my life, your life. You had a father.
Mm-hmm.
The two are kind of related that way. So I said a source until a Prince of Peace. Then there was a Yoez in this name too, and I don't know what it means. But my favorite translation just didn't translate it, so that's why I wrote it the way I did.
You know what verse that is?
Let's see. It's in 9, and it's pretty close to the beginning.
Okay, all right, that's good.
Is that fair enough? In this name, there are implications that it will go beyond Hezekiah or Hezekiah into the future until there is peace. Okay, Sar Shalom is Prince of Peace. So he's saying Hezekiah. Now, what we know about Hezekiah was he was a strong king. When the forces of Assyria were right at outside his gates,
Mm-hmm.
he consulted Isaiah and he stood strong.
Who consulted Isaiah?
Hezekiah did.
Oh, yes, right. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay.
Okay. He not only was strong, but he, at the beginning of his reign, the northern kingdom people were still there. And he had a festival for Pesach
For Passover.
that said it was none like it until going back to the time of Solomon.
Yeah. Boy.
And he invited all the people of the north to come down and celebrate that festival.
Yeah.
He got some of them down there.
Yeah.
So that's why the people in the north, when he was born, saw a great light.
Mm.
There was hope.
Okay.
They may not have known it, but that's what it was telling them. So,
so the great light is just symbolic then?
yes, it's symbolic of the person that's on. You have hope if you look. What is an equivalent today? When Trump was president, things really got lined up in America. People were having good times, and they were getting trade agreements. Everything was kind of humming. So now that he was taken out and everything's turned back to what it was, even worse than ever before, the people are looking to someone that will give them hope again. So they find it in a leader that can do things. Mm-hmm. They don't care what is past or anything of that. If he can do the job, that's what we want. That's their hope. Mm-hmm. So Hezekiah was really a good king and one of the best they'd had for a long time. Yeah. Yotam is considered a good king. His father was considered a good king. Mm-hmm. Another one was the one that followed Rehoboam.
Yeah.
These were some.
Well, the father of
Josiah was a good king.
Yeah, he was the father of.
He was the son of Manasseh, who was one of the worst.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Manasseh was a son of Hezekiah.
Oh, that's right.
So Hezekiah had his name. This until the Prince of Peace indicates that his line should continue until we get this Prince of Peace. Mm. That goes into the future.
Right. Yeah.
Because during Hezekiah's time, there was no peace. And there was no peace during Manasseh's time.
Yeah.
And Josiah wasn't promised any peace.
No.
But he was promised peace through his lifetime.
Yeah, because God couldn't reverse the punishment. It had been so bad.
But he wasn't going to reverse it. He said it was just putting it off.
Right.
He knew what was coming.
Yeah.
Okay, so now the people in the north, after Assyria takes out the kings of the two nations, and the people are living in darkness, they try all kinds of things, as it reads in chapter 8, are not put down yet. They did not repent. So they, in their pride, say, the bricks have fallen, but we will build with hewn stone. They chop down cypress sycamore, but we will plant cedars in their place. But they said all of this as Rezin and the Philistines are eating up Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they think that they're going to be strong enough to do this. They're taking heart. Maybe because of Hezekiah, they're taking heart. I don't know.
Well, the Philistines are so active then with Rezin?
Yeah, the Philistines were still. Actually, they were only under guard during David and Solomon's time.
Yeah.
They still existed.
Yeah, they weren't really taken out until Babylon came.
Yeah, Babylon took them out. So God says, I'm still not done with them yet. And he gives a lot of different things in that chapter about how he's not done with them yet because of their sin.
Mm-hmm.
And God cuts down the elders and the false prophets, who are the heads and the tails, and his anger is still not turned away. The whole land is darkened, and Manasseh is against Ephraim, and he's against Manasseh, and they are both against Judah. And still his wrath is not turned away. Okay, you can't have fighting in the house of God and have peace in the earth. Do you know that the people of this world are waiting for peace, for the Jews to get things settled here and straightened out, for them to acknowledge God in a firm and more greater way? The rabbis may do this, but the government is not in accord with what the rabbis say. The judicial system isn't in accord with what the leaders want. It's really still in a place of darkness.
Yeah. But I lost it. I don't know.
Okay, well, so those
I was going to say that
squabbles are
Christians think they have an answer, but they're not really a government that's going to bring peace.
No, they're not formed together as a whole. Now, the Catholic Church tried to make it a whole.
Yeah.
They said we're the only church on earth.
Right.
And they have a government in the Pope and the Rome.
But he has some influence, but not.
Well, they had greater influence until the Reformation and the Rebellion.
Oh, yeah.
So that's not put together either. But they are replacement.
Oh, yeah. It's not going to work.
Because their king is the one that's going to rule.
It's interesting that, like when we had the series on Israel and the nations, Israel will never go out and conquer the nations to run everything. They're just going to make sure the nations are run right.
Well, they're going to be a witness, and the nations, by choice, will want to align themselves with God.
That's right.
Right now, the one world government that's trying to form, those people that are trying to form it, want the people to choose, but they're not choosing that, and so they want to force them to choose that. God does not force us. Well, he puts pressure on. Well, the pressure is that if you don't have God, you don't have peace, you don't have love, you don't have any of these good things. If you have God, you get it all.
And I think the Abrahamic Accords are not perfect, but it's a little bit of a sign of what can happen. These countries, now these Arab countries, want to align with Israel.
Yeah, right. That's why they want to. So now we are ready for chapter 10, Frank. How long have we been going? Do you want to go on till we get it all done and then divide the video, or and send out part of it?
Why don't we do, I think it's been a half hour. Why don't we do the rest of it next time?
Okay, we'll start with chapter 10.
Okay.
I think the rest of it goes a little bit, well, it's about the same number of pages.
That way, too, we might get some questions back from people.
Yeah, maybe so. Because 10 is, we've got another important prophecy to pull some of this together.
That would be good, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's
Thanks.
As far as we got now.
Yeah,
We know
thank you.
that,
Thank you, that was good.
Yeah, so we know, what we know is that, I was going to say that where it says the bricks have fallen down, we'll build back better.
Yeah.
Well, we had a government back in 2001 when the Twin Towers came down, quoting these scriptures,
Yeah.
saying the same thing, we will build back better.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Biden's mantra. We'll build back better. We gotta tear it down ourselves so we can build back better. But what it really does, though, it points out that a good portion of the Northern Kingdom people have emerged in America.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I want to say there's rabbis that believe America is Rome. Edom.
Oh.
Rome was populated by Edom. Edom took over. That's why they could appoint Herod king, because he was an Edomite.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was so interesting when they were bringing the ark up from the Philistines. It ended up being in Edom Eved house. His name was Edom Eved, which is, he may have been a real Judah person, I don't know. Or he could have had a strain of Edomite in him, is why he got that name. But it's interesting that he had the Ark of God in his house and it got blessed big time.
Yeah.
So the people that wanted freedom came to America, and they knew that real freedom came from God. That's in our Constitution. And so they wanted a nation that was under God.
Mm-hmm.
And they got the blessing. So if they were partially Edom,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't matter. They got the blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And there is the element of Edom in America, but it's also holding this blessing of God in it. So where did the ark have to end up? It ended up in Judah at Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a transfer of that ark, or that blessing of God, to Jerusalem to make it what it should be. Then the blessing will flow back out into the whole world.
Wow.
We here in Israel have to quit kowtowing to America or any other nation in the world, the UN especially. We want them to accept us. They're never going to accept us until we're strong and have that ark of God in us, that presence of God.
And whenever we want to get along with nations, causes us to compromise what we believe.
Right.
It won't work.
It won't work. So I think that that's a juncture where we are in America, and it's kind of where I'm leaving you today in this story, okay? So have a good week, and we'll talk to you more next week. Shalom.